hot. We got jackets on today, so you know it's got to be something special coming in. I'm James Williams. That's Lonnie Malone. We got our man Valton Johnson down there with us. And as a matter of fact, bro, you got the voice while Lonnie always talk about me, man. Tell them who we got coming, bro.
Well, I sure appreciate that, James. Good afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are extremely excited. We have a very special guest, longtime friend of mine, and a great United States Senator, Doug Jones, with us today. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Valton. I appreciate being here. It's good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Good to see you as well.
And I guess we'll go here first. We're going to assume nobody knows who you are in this great state of Alabama. So can you tell us who Doug Jones is?
Absolutely. Look, guys, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on a hot, sunny Sunday afternoon. It's really nice here. Look, I'm just a kid from Fairfield. Grew up in Fairfield, lived in Alabama all my life, grew up, went to public schools in Fairfield, graduated from Fairfield High School and the University of Alabama. Went to law school right here at Cumberland School of Law. All my kids went to, public schools through high school here. We've just, grew up in the shadow of U.S. Steel, but also grew up in a time, where things were really changing in Alabama and in the South, in the 60s. And it really kind of helped shape me, I think, a great deal. I was fortunate enough to work for the late, great Howell Heflin, a U.S. Senator from Alabama, for 3 terms back in the 70s. And he finished in 96. He retired in 1996. I worked for him in the 70s, right out of law school. And it was an incredible experience and really helped mold me. There's a book I've been reading called The Last Great Senate about that era, that 4 years between 77 and 81, and how the Senate worked so well together, debated the issues and got so much things done, so much different than where we are today with Mitch McConnell leading the Senate. But it really helped shape me. And so that's what I try to do. And then, I was an assistant U.S. attorney. I was in private practice here in Birmingham, then was really honored to have President Bill Clinton appoint me as United States Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, which is 31 out of the 67 counties in the state of Alabama. And it was in that context that we prosecuted, the last 2 bombers of the 16th Street Baptist Church. 37 and 38 years after the fact, we put Tommy Blanton and Bobby Frank Cherry in prison for the murder of those 4 young girls. And it was remarkable achievement and really the highlight of my career. Went back into private practice and, things just happened in 2017, when Jeff Sessions became Attorney General. It just opened up this Senate seat, and it was something that the kids were getting grown, and my practice had done well, and it was time, I thought, for the Democratic Party and a Democratic Party voice to get back out there, to have a voice for folks who really hadn't had a voice for so many people in a long time, about 25 years since Howell Heflin left. So we're lucky enough, I jumped into that race, and in a special election on December the 12th of 2017, which, as you know, Valton, was my 25th wedding anniversary to my lovely wife, Louise, who you know very well, was lucky enough to get elected. And well, we hit the ground running, and we have done some things. We've reached across the aisle to get things done. It's the only way to get things done up there. 21 bills that have been passed and signed into law that I've either led or been a co-lead on. We've done things for the Black Belt. We've done things for farmers. We've done things for veterans. We've done things for Black farmers in particular. Folks don't realize this, but y'all may be familiar with heirs property, where so many African-American families lost their land over the years because they couldn't get good title. And the farmers that were farming that land that they were able to keep couldn't get U.S. Department of Agriculture loans and credit. And we were able to change that law. And so now we got a whole new generation of Black farmers out there that can get access to the capital and the loans they need. We've done things like that. And, I've been a very strong voice for equality, for civil rights, for putting teeth back in the Voting Rights Act. And in these last couple of months, I've been a really strong voice for the inequities, or the racial inequities that we see in America that have been a multi-generational failure and this historic time we are in to try to correct those once and for all.
Right. And I'm glad you say that. But before I get into my question, I want to ask you this. A lot of people know politics, but they don't know job descriptions. So if you had to give the job description in particular of what a senator does, could you do that?
You know, there are 2 senators from every state. It is unlike the House of Representatives, there's only 2. So I represent the entire state of Alabama, which means I try to represent the interest of a very diverse group of people from all zip codes, from all walks of life, from all backgrounds and races and religions. So what I try to do as a public servant is to get out there and listen to people, understand the issues that concern them, and to try to do my best to put those forward those issues in the United States Senate. We've got to pass bills in the Senate that also have to pass in the House of Representatives and then have to get signed by the President of the United States. So trying to work with people to try to really find common ground. I mean, that's the key, I think, for a good U.S. Senator is trying to find common ground. I don't go into this job, I don't think anybody should go into it like my opponent is, as kind of a us versus them. I represent everybody in Alabama. People that don't always agree with me on a lot of things, or even certainly not on everything, but I still represent them and I listen to them and I try to take their comments, their concerns, and what I learned from them into account when I'm fashioning things. And I've done a pretty good job doing that. But it is, you know, the Senate is one house of Congress. We've got to pass bills on both houses to get it done. And to get things done, you really got to find that common ground. And I think as a lawyer, my training as a lawyer has really helped me, even though I'm an advocate. You know, lawyers are advocates, but to get things done for your clients, you've also got to find common ground. You've got to reach across and discuss things so that at the end of the day, you can resolve an issue without having to go to litigation, maybe resolve an issue that is going to satisfy everybody, not 100%, but just satisfy everybody and you can move forward. I think my training like that, defense, you know, criminal defense lawyer, prosecutor, back and forth some really helped me try to forge that common ground.
Let's switch gears just a little bit here. So this post office business, okay? Now, everybody's going crazy about what's going on with this post office. Now, what I'm hearing is that the post office is an entity unto itself. So if that be the case, how can a president move boxes, shut down machinery, and all this sort of stuff if it is an entity unto itself? I know it's an branch of the federal government.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still a government, it's still a government agency, okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not even sure I fully realize this, but, you know, the post office is literally written into the Constitution of the United States. Wow. And so it is a government entity. It's just that it's supposed to be somewhat self-sufficient. But the Postmaster General is still appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. So you've still got that government oversight. And the Senate, the Homeland Security Committee, has oversight over the post office. So the administration can still influence what's happening. And this administration has been trying to dismantle the post office for a while. They've just believed it ought to be a private entity, a for-profit entity, and don't fully appreciate how important it is to rural areas, for people to get their medications, for people to get their checks. I mean, it is a lifeline to so many people in this country. And now there has been a stepped up effort simply because we're in a pandemic and the president is afraid of mail-in votes. He's just desperately afraid of mail-in votes. And guys, I got to tell you, it's just stunning to me that any president, any public official would try to stop something that people need to cast a ballot. I mean, you know, instead of saying, look, we're going to do everything we can to make sure the Postal Service is funded. They've got all the technology they need. They got all the manpower we need. We want to make sure every vote is counted, no matter how it is mailed in or brought in. He just wants to dismantle it and say, oh my God, we can't fund the post office because it's fraud. Good grief. There is no evidence of that. I mean, we've had mail-in ballots in Colorado and Oregon and other places for a long time.
Right.
They don't have any of that. This is a desperation tactic that is really a sad state of affairs for this country when the president of the United States does not want to have people vote.
Yeah, it was just amazing. It was amazing. Oh, I'm sorry, Valter, go ahead.
I'm sorry. How is he going to vote? Is he mailing in his ballot?
He's already sent his application in to get his mail-in ballot. Yes, always does it. And for some reason, he is trying to make a distinction between an absentee ballot and a so-called mail-in ballot.
What's the difference?
What is it?
They're both put in the mail.
Right.
They're both put in the mail. There is no difference whatsoever. He keeps talking about universal mail-in, and that's not going to happen this year. I mean, I don't know if it will ever happen, but I think, we're moving to a situation where people ought to be able to have an easier option for mail-in votes if that's what they want to do. Some states, it will be universal mail-in. New Jersey just decided they're going to go all in for mail-in votes like Colorado's done. Every state can have that option. I don't see a state like Alabama moving to that way in a long time. I still think we'll have, voting places for a long time, but we need to loosen up and we need to be able to get mail-in votes. And if we're going to continue to have polling places, we need early voting.
It's amazing to me, and I'm just going to make this statement, that the president just utilized the system with the mail-outs of the checks and the stimulus. It's good enough for that, but it's not good enough to hold elections, which there's no history of fraud in the history of the postal system. So that's just mind-boggling to me. But
no, you're absolutely right, and people aren't putting that connection together. Let me tell you, I used to be a federal prosecutor, okay? And one of the things we used to have to prosecute all the time were people stealing checks out of the mail, okay? Forging people's names, and that was a huge fraud. That's a hell of a lot bigger problem than fraud when it comes to the ballot box. I mean, and the fact, but here's the difference now. Let's be honest. He wanted those checks with his big old signature on them.
Right.
Because for him, that was just a campaign postcard, is what that was.
Right, absolutely. And my question now would be, how do you rate the COVID response federally and also here in the state?
Well, I think the state has done a pretty good job with the resources that they have. Let's talk about that first. I really think, and I was a little bit critical early on of the state and their response, but I will say that about the 1st of May or something like that, whenever Governor Ivey issued the first stay-at-home order, she started getting it right, and she was listening to healthcare professionals. And we've got some great healthcare professionals in the state at UAB and North Alabama and South Alabama. And she started listening to those, and that was her stay-at-home order, then the safer-at-home order, then ultimately that state mask. And I think the proof is in the pudding. We're seeing now, 1 month after her statewide mask order, with many more people actually wearing masks, that our numbers are beginning to show that decline that we've been waiting on for so long. Now we're keeping our fingers crossed because that could change, and we got Labor Day coming up, so we can't let our guard down. But I really think our state response has been good with the resources that they've had. They've not been able to test everybody. They've not been able to get testing sites into all areas, but they have been moving things around, and I think overall they've done a pretty good job. The federal response from this administration, I think I would rate it maybe a D- or an F from the very beginning, because the president kept downplaying the virus. He said that early on, when there were only 13 cases here, it was all under control, wasn't going to spread, and look where we are today, 5 million cases, 25, you guys, the United States of America has only 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the cases. Now that is unconscionable. The president downplayed it, said it was all going to disappear. We had no strategy for testing. We had no strategy for the distribution of testing. We had no strategy for getting PPE. Remember back in those days where the states were fighting it out? It was just like the wild, wild west.
Right.
And then as things began to, as it looked like we were getting things under control, the president started poking everybody to open the economy. open up, open up, open up, started criticizing governors in New York and Michigan for keeping things locked down, urging the protesters to think. And look what's happened. Look where we are today with these numbers still high. And then we had Memorial Day. People didn't wear the mask. Again, you know, leaders are supposed to set examples. You know what happened? It became a political issue. You had Memorial Day, July the 4th. We got Labor Day coming up. I'll tell you something interesting, fellas. I was going back over reading some stuff from the spring. When Governor Ivey issued her first order about stay at home, she made this comment. She said, what we do now will depend on whether or not you have college football in the fall.
Right.
Well, people didn't listen to that. They listened instead to a president who refused to wear a mask, who said it was going to all go away. And here we are, and look what is happening to college football. We may still play some games in the Southeastern Conference, but it is definitely going to be a different world than it has been in previous football years. And with two conferences not playing, I don't know what the season's going to ultimately look like. Everybody wanted to play college football. Everybody's talking about it, but nobody acted like it back when it counted back last spring and early summer. And so now schools are opening, and we've got to keep getting this virus under control.
How do you feel about the school openings? Me personally, it's just, I don't think it's time, just speaking from my standpoint, but how do you feel about the schools opening?
Well, I think every school is different. I do think there are places in the state where they're seeing the numbers way down, and they've got a better opportunity to keep things under control. I would be real reluctant in some communities and not so much as others. The problem is that we in Congress fail to give them the resources that they need to open schools safely. You know, the House of Representatives passed a bill in May the 15th, called the HEROES Act. That was not a perfect bill, but it was a framework to talk about. And
right.
Mitch McConnell wouldn't do it. That
right.
bill got secreted away in a file cabinet somewhere in his office, and he wouldn't even talk about it. Said there was no urgency. And then when we're on the verge of schools opening, unemployment running out, and the PPP program, the payroll program running out, he all of a sudden starts dribbling out his proposals at the eve and said, well, you need to just pass what I wanted. It was woefully inadequate. It was horribly inadequate. So I really think, again, it's going to depend on the schools. You know, some school systems are pushing back the date to after Labor Day. And if our numbers keep going down, they're going to be in better shape by having done so. The school board, state school boards, giving them a lot of authority. Some are going to go virtual for a period of time just to keep the kids learning. You know, everybody wants to get our kids back in school. Everybody understands that that is the best learning environment. But we got to do it safe. We got to do it healthy. These kids, there's 7,000 children in Alabama that have COVID. They can pass it along to folks. The teachers are at risk. The families are at risk. And we just got to understand where we are in this crisis and recognize that we got to make a few more sacrifices. Americans and Alabamians have made sacrifices before, and we can do it a little longer, you know, until we get a vaccine that we can get widely distributed.
Senator Jones, we know that in every bill that helps the people, there are some, cushion, something that don't really need to be in there. Why didn't the Senate put in mandatory testing for the children, the ability to be tested in the lower value communities, I guess you would say, underserved communities?
Well, let's go back a little bit to try to figure out where we were on a couple of things. Remember, the last legislation that was passed by Congress was the middle of April. And that only dealt with the payroll protection program that had run out of money in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and a little bit extra money for hospitals and some extra money for testing. What everybody had assumed, I mean, those bills were crafted and passed bipartisanship. I mean, I think all those bills passed the Senate unanimously, okay? So you can understand that we were working hard. We saw where things were going, but we also thought that by the summer, we would be in better shape than we are right now. And we certainly thought that by the time school opening, we would be in a lot better shape. We would be in better shape on testing. We would have more tests out there, that the administration would have done a better job of getting testing out there. And that's where the problem was. And since that time, the HEROES Act passed a bill that would have gotten more testing, would have helped schools open better, but yet it's been sitting there since May the 15th, and we haven't seen anything on the floor of the U.S. Senate. And that's Mitch McConnell. I mean, literally 10 days before we left, 11 days before we were to go on recess is when he started dribbling things out there. And it did provide money for schools, for resources, for both testing, PPE, other things, but there were so many strings attached to it that it was never going to pass, but he never put it on the floor. He couldn't even get his caucus to do it. So that's part of the problem. I'm telling you, there is a failure of leadership by this administration, as well as Mitch McConnell, in trying to get something done for the American people, including the unemployment benefits for so many Americans that are now over. They ended about a week ago.
Can you, I know Senator Shelby is a great guy. I know you all are friends. Can you, Shelby and Governor Ivey, get together and say, okay, can we do something for testing? I know like UAB will be testing their students, but they all have $1 billion in funds. Is there a way that you can get, just say the Birmingham school system, we'll just use that because we're in Birmingham. Is there a way that you can do something to help those children?
It's trying to get money. The state doesn't have the money to do it. We've given the state some money and they're distributing it out. It's a question of federal resources. And, you know, Senator Shelby is the chair of appropriations, but he's got to work with McConnell and Trump. And, you know, at one point, Trump didn't even want to do money for testing. You know, the president of the United States has said, we got to quit testing because, you know, if we quit testing, we won't have as many cases. Now, I mean, that's just stunning to think about. And so maybe he needs to go back to elementary school to learn those kind of, you know, basic logic and arithmetic. But it is a question of funds. You know, some of the, like University of Alabama football team and Auburn and UAB's team, they're doing testing once a week on everybody. We need to be doing more of that right now. Now, these schools are requiring, I think, their students to have a test on their own before they come to school. And the idea is that if they have negative testing that comes and congregates, maybe they can contain the virus. I think it's not a bad strategy, but they really do need, you're absolutely right, the school systems and our colleges and universities need to have a way that these kids can get tested on a regular basis, so that if they test positive, they can be self-quarantined for a period of time. And then you can go back and trace who they've been with so they can self-quarantine.
Now, I know I want to go to the black belt, but for a second, because I don't want to miss this. First, I want to commend you. You have done an excellent job speaking out for the Black Lives Matter issues that are going on, because we should not have Sandra Bland or George Floyd or any other. I mean, there's so many.
Breonna Taylor
is on there. Yes, Breonna Taylor. Please arrest those police officers right now.
Right.
For that, what can Congresswoman Terry Sewell, again, Shelby and Kay Ivey, Governor Ivey, I'm sorry, I always want to make sure I respect everybody. What can you do to make sure that doesn't happen in Alabama? I know we have a Facebook post saying that Colorado has made a sweeping law enforcement change. What can you do for us in the Black Belt, in Birmingham, the civil rights district of the world? What can happen to make sure that doesn't happen here?
Well, let me tell you, the things that we're trying to do from a federal perspective, and remember, from a federal perspective, like we can only pass rules, regulations that would affect federal law enforcement, U.S. Marshal Service, Secret Service, FBI, folks like that. But what we can do is use the power of our purse strings to insist that states do better training, that they ban chokeholds. Then we can do things to try to either do away with or limit the qualified immunity laws that are out there. you know, from my perspective, I'm on a bill, a co-sponsor of a bill with Senator Harris, my friend, the next vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, and Senator Cory Booker, to do those very things, to have de-escalation training, which I think is critically important, to try to do implicit bias training more than we have been, to try to have more transparency in the way that excessive force cases are investigated within departments and or prosecuted by local authorities. The state of Alabama could do things on their own without us, but that is a state prerogative. So, you know, between the governor, the attorney general, your local police, and it doesn't prohibit, by the way, our local law enforcement here in Birmingham from doing it on their own. There's no law that would prevent that. And I think you're seeing that around the country today too, where local law enforcement officers are leading the way, because we can't get that bill through in Congress right now. I mean, McConnell will not put the Harris-Booker bill on the floor of the U.S. Senate, and we've got to continue to push for those reforms. I think that they're a very demonstrable thing that we could do to demonstrate our commitment to equality within the criminal justice system that then can spread to all manner. And I've told folks many, many times, I mean, look, I gave a pretty impassioned speech after we read Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail for the second year in a row. I led the reading of that, you know, in its entirety on the floor of the Senate. And I gave a pretty impassioned speech about the fact that we can't let this historic moment pass, that we cannot truly, we can say all lives matter, but we really can't mean it until we can stand and say, Black lives matter, just like I did on the floor of the United States Senate, and mean it. That's what we've got to do. Continue to speak out. And it's great to take down Confederate monuments. I've been talking about that for several years now. But we got to remember, it's one thing to remove a block of granite that in 2 years, people passing by will never know it was there. Right. What we got to do is not just remove those blocks of granite. We got to remove barriers in healthcare, economics, education. It's the barriers that need to come down and not just the monuments and the name.
And we're talking about barriers. That brings me to this. Where are we with this border wall funding and all this sort of stuff?
Well, it's, you know, there will be some border wall probably funding that will get put in the appropriations package. You know, the president has often tried to use it to hold up hostages. I mean, you may be seeing those silly ads running against me right now. And what they're not telling you is that was 1 vote out of 5. I was the only Democrat that actually, those were about keeping the government running. And the only reason I voted against that one is because they tried to do so many, the administration decided to do so many more horrible things with regard to immigration. But I voted for that wall funding 5 times or 4 or 5 times in a row. But the fact is, the president has had not a really good plan. He talks about the wall. People talk about a wall, but when it comes to a real plan, they don't really have it. They have these photo ops, but they're not working that great. And they haven't had a plan. And what I've been, you know, since I got the Senate, I have been promoting some barriers as well as technology and increased border patrol. I was part of a bipartisan group that came up with a package that would have been $25 billion for border security. And this is in 2018. It was something that the president had initially said he would be in favor of. We had Republicans and Democrats. We came up 2 votes or 3 votes short of getting the necessary votes for it. And the reason we didn't is because the president pulled the rug out from under it at the last minute, and some of the Republicans flipped their vote to no. I've always been for border security, but it needs to be well planned. It needs to be thought out. It needs to be something that we need to look at and study and make sure we're doing it the right way and the efficient way.
I want to kind of jump back to the criminal justice because, as you know, on August the 22nd, they have the National Day of Freedom and Justice. Here in Birmingham, you know, we linked up with some national organizations, and you were talking about law enforcement, and I wanted to give a shout out to the Sheriff Mark Petway. He's going to come down. The district attorney here, Danny Carr, is going to come down and use his, let's say bully pulpit is usually what we call it, but he's going to speak out against injustice. can we count on you to continue that fight? Because there's a lot of people
Oh,
that are inside the system that are still suffering from injustice.
absolutely. There's no question. I mean, I don't know about all that's going on. I know that when I was on Reverend Sharpton's show a few weeks ago, he was talking
Right.
about,
Right.
coinciding with the March on Washington speech from Dr. King. But I do that all the time. And by the way, and I think it's really important for your audience to know, I don't just talk about that when I'm speaking to you guys. I don't talk about that just when I'm speaking to preachers down in the Black Belt. I've
Absolutely.
given that same talk about the need for change, about the multi-generational failures that I'm part of. And I think I've done it a lot for folks of all races, but it's still a multi-generational failure. And I say the same things to you that I say to the Birmingham Kiwanis and Rotary Clubs and to the Huntsville Chamber of Commerce, even the Etowah County, really conservative Chamber of Commerce up in Gadsden. I say the same things, and that's the importance. And when you see things happening, when you see NASCAR pulling down the Confederate flag, you see the state of Mississippi pulling their flag, when you see Mayor Woodfin being able to get the CEOs of the white men and women from the biggest companies in Birmingham to join together to not only talk about the failures that we've had, but to pledge together to do things, to give economic opportunities for Black and minority entrepreneurs, which I did a roundtable on the other day, get more diversity on their boards, mentor more folks. We're making real progress, folks. It is not something that we're going to change overnight, but we are making real progress. And again, I just think we are in such a historic moment that we just can't let it pass. And we've just got to keep our foot on the gas to make sure it comes to pass.
Senator Jones, I'm going to ask you a really hard question. It's a long question. And let me start with this. Right now, we're in 2020, and we're talking about a vice president who isn't Black, but is Black, and we're talking about two older white guys who are going against each other. I know we need to come past that, right? We need to just, it is what it is. Let's focus on the issues, right? What does your platform speak to? Let's do it this way. Let's say James Williams is liberal, right? Let's say Valton is progressive. Let's say I'm middle of the road conservative. How can you, as a senator, speak to those issues and not color? Because
it's a real simple question. You speak to the issues.
Yeah.
I mean, you speak to the issues. We really have more in common than divide us. And I try to, everywhere I go in the state, no matter where I am, I don't try to put labels on anybody unless I see a Klan type person out there. Those are pretty easy to spot and label, but we really have more in common. So I think the key is exactly the way you phrased it, and that is speaking to the issues. The kitchen table issues that I talked about in my 2017 campaign, about making sure everybody has health care, affordable access to health care, expanding Medicaid to give everybody that affordable access to health care, that we talk about equal opportunities for jobs, not just in Birmingham and in Huntsville and the metropolitan areas, but we repurpose some of the existing facilities that have closed in our rural areas to bring healthcare manufacturing jobs, for instance, down there in those areas. That we talk about getting rural broadband, high-speed internet across Alabama to make sure our kids, we don't have a homework gap, to make sure our businesses do that. We can have telemedicine more so than we've ever had in the past. And I've always maintained one of the problems that we've had in this state is that people have put too many labels on too many people. You see that in the campaign right now, where folks are trying to put labels all over me, okay? Well, they don't stick because I have really worked to find common ground. And if you find common ground, those, you're going to be all over the board with things to try to make sure that we have progress as a state. So that's how I've been doing it. That's why I got 21 bills. In 2.5 years, guys, 21 bills in which I was a lead or co-lead sponsor on. that passed both houses of Congress, signed into law by President Trump, all bipartisan bills with the Republicans on those bills. That's how you do that. You don't put labels on it. You talk about issues, how you can help folks. And that's, you know, veterans, farmers, teachers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, radio folks, you name it. That's how we do things.
You know,
I want to, oh, go ahead. Right.
you know, quickly, I'll make it quick. It only appears to be in Democratic Party where you have to apologize for being bipartisan when the Republicans are in rule right now. You have to work with both sides. And one thing I believe when you speak about it, because during your kickoff in Alabama, we were there. I know Valton was there. I was there. When One Alabama was introduced, I saw that room. That room was very well diverse. That room was unified, and it was to serve a purpose. I applaud you for that. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because you're on the right track. I don't want you to seem like, and it's been said throughout the years where Doug Jones has been too partisan, and I'm like, he has to get something done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm too partisan. I mean, look, I grew up as a Democrat. I still believe that the Democrats, you know, the Democratic Party gave us Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. It protected farmers. It protected workers for, you know, in organized labor. We've done things for working folks around the country. Lister Hill from Alabama put up rural hospitals all over the place. John Sparkman helped modernize the banking system. We've done things, you know, Howell Heflin was a champion of agriculture in this state. So Democrats have this history. We've just gotten defined in ways that dealt with these social cultural wars. And we got to move back to the kitchen table issues. Not that those social issues are not important to people, because they are. They're deeply held beliefs and they're important. But we can find so much common ground in so many areas. That's what this is about. That's why, you know, folks, I've been named one of the most bipartisan senators in the United States Senate the last 2 years in a row. One by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is no liberal socialist type organization. They're a pretty business oriented conservative group. And so the only way in an institution like the U.S. Senate and the Congress that you can actually get things done is in a bipartisan way. You know, Lyndon Johnson could have never gotten the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act passed if he didn't have Everett Dirksen, the leader of the Republican Party, in the Senate to bring some of his votes along, to get enough votes to pass that in a historic way. That's how you get the historic legislation. That's how you get the small things for folks. It's how you modernize our military and how you move this country forward by being able to work with people, not compromising your principles, but being able to move to an agreement and find common ground.
The Senator Harris nomination for vice president, do you think that strengthened the party or it made it weaker?
Absolutely strengthens the party. You know, first of all, you know, Lonnie mentioned a minute ago about, you know, two old white guys duking it out for president, which is what it's generally been, not always, obviously, but I think what the Harris-Biden ticket brings, or Biden-Harris ticket brings, is that bridge that we are going to see now, and it is incredibly important and positive. It would have been anyway, but given the moment that we're in, the historic moment we're in, it is one of the best messages that you can possibly ever give to the fact that America is diverse. It's still continuing to grow more diverse every day. And that's what she represents. She is great. She is so smart. She's one of my better friends in the Senate because her desk sits right behind me on the floor. And before the pandemic, where we could just go and hang out a little bit, she and I would just sit back and we'd laugh. I mean, she's so smart. She's a unifier. She is somebody that can work with folks she's not a my way or the highway kind of legislator. You can't do that. And she has really worked well with Joe Biden. And I'm just really excited. I am and everything we're hearing from Mobile to Huntsville is an excitement about the Biden-Harris ticket that I have not heard in a long, long time.
Do you think that fear is driving the president conversation around Bertha?
Oh, I think it's desperation, fear. I think, he sees all of this slipping away. Look, this has all been just about him. It's never been about the American people. And that's a really sad thing. But if you see some of the things he said, not that he hasn't done some things that I think are positive, because he has done some things that are positive, particularly in the military. But at the same time, his public comments, his tweets, you can tell it's just all about him and the reelect, and not the attack on the Postal Service is just as good. The complete lack of leadership when it's come to dealing with this pandemic. I think that this is just another desperate attack with him. He thought it kind of worked for him in 2016, but I got news for him. We're on to this now. I mean, the American public's on to this now. We're just not, people are not going to buy into all of that anymore. They're going to say, let's see what you've actually done, and let's make some comparisons here. And I'll put Joe Biden's 40-year career in public service against Donald Trump's any day of the week. I'll put Kamala Harris's the success and the bridges and the trailblazing opportunities that she's had up against Mike Pence any day of the week.
Well, I can't wait to see that debate. Go ahead, Lonnie. I can't wait to see that. Go ahead, Lonnie.
Reach out to Kamala Harris, and if you don't mind, if you can pass a good word out to us, we would love to speak to her, because I was actually one person who actually spoke out to her the day that she spoke at Howard. I said Kamala for president, and people were like, well, it's too early, Lonnie. It's, wait till everybody else get in. And I said, I don't vote like that. When I'm a candidate, that's who I go with. Like, same with you. When we first found out about you and the thing that you were going against, that perfect storm, I would say, because it was just, you could just see the momentum building, and we saw the hard work that you did, and we appreciate it.
Well, Kamala was here in March,
Mm-hmm.
early March, before the pandemic really hit. It was the Selma, bridge reenactment weekend. She went down there, and then she called me. I couldn't go I went that morning, but had some other things to do, and I didn't stay for the bridge crossing. But she had called and said, what can I do to help your campaign? She was out of the presidential race by then. And she called and said, what can I do to help? I'm going to be in Alabama. And so we set up an event. My wife, Louise, and Kamala and Bobby Knight did a panel discussion out at Miles College. It was amazing. And I thought I was going to end up going out of town. I didn't. So it was so much fun. They didn't know I was going to pop in, and they were all on stage, crowded people out there. It was just a great event. And I snuck in, and just as they were about to end, I just kind of snuck in from behind the curtain. And it was just great. I mean, she is so good at so many things and will be such a inspiration. That's the other thing. You remember when Barack Obama accepted the nomination, and the inspiration that he provided to so many kids in this country, so many minority kids in this country. Well, now, we had Hillary Clinton, that provided some inspiration for women, for sure. But now you got Kamala that can provide that inspiration for so many young men, young women, of color across this country, to say this is the greatest country in the world, and we can do whatever we set our mind to do. She's going to be a great candidate, but she's going to be a hell of a vice president.
What can the people do? I understand the president can be controlled to a point. He just can't up and do everything. Why is it seems that Mitch McConnell can do anything he wants in DC and he stops bills.
It's the rules of the Senate. The way the rules of the Senate have evolved, the majority leader has all control over the floor. He could adjourn like he did the other day, and I just blasted him for adjourning the Senate. He can hold bills. He can bring bills. He can pass committees. It is an all-powerful position in the Senate right now, and there's very little that can be done at this point, and except vote. And hopefully the people of Kentucky going to turn out to vote.
Yeah.
Back in the last election, African-American women came out. I think it was 98%, 96%?
Well, it was, I don't know what the turnout was, but I know that we had a higher minority turnout than
Absolutely.
usual. And then it was like 98% of the black women that turned out voted for me.
Now, what would you say to the younger black guys? Because there's going to be a movement with the millennials out there.
Right.
And then they're going to come out, I believe, this time and vote in droves.
Yeah.
If you had to communicate to them, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to look at my history over the last 2.5 years. Look what I've done from the word go to help the minority communities in the state of Alabama. Look what I've did. You know, it may not affect them in certain areas, but look what I've done in the Black Belt to try to get sewer and quality water sanitation, septic tanks, sewer things, which is a real problem down in that area. Look what I've done for maternal health, particularly women of color, where maternal mortality is 3 times higher for black women than it is white women. For infant mortality, where it's 4 to 5 times higher for black children than white children. And rural health care. Look what I've done to try to talk about the Voting Rights Act and to get more votes. Look what I've done for economic opportunities to bring more jobs to Alabama. But importantly, look at the voice that they've had. You know, I'm just another white guy from the South. But I think the minority populations in Alabama, particularly the black community, have had a strong voice in the United States Senate. And that's the voice I want them to hear. I want them to see that speech that I gave on the floor of the United States Senate following the letter from Birmingham jail, to let them know I understand and I know and I am fighting for everything that they believe in and what we're trying to do. And we can't let up. So I think if they look at that record that I've done specifically in the last 2.5 years for the black community in Alabama, and look as importantly at the soapbox and how I've used the platform of the U.S. Senate to advocate for things for the black community, I think that I hope that they will see that there's not really much choice between me and my opponent in terms of getting things done and having that voice out there.
Well, Senator, what can we do and the people do right now to help you cross that finish line in November?
Well, you know, it's a great question. We're still trying to figure out the best way to get people to vote. Absentee ballots are going to be starting delivered or that you can get pretty soon. People may want to vote absentee. It's going to be a challenge because you got to get an application, a photo ID, and have 2 people witness it. But we need to start educating people about how to do that if that's what they want to do. We got to get people engaged in churches, in barbershops, everywhere you go. People ought to find out if everybody that's coming in there is registered to vote. If they're not, help them register, vote, but get them engaged. We got to make sure people understand that the vote counts. Look what happened in 2016. You know, and here we are. Elections have consequences. And we wouldn't have the voice in the United States Senate for the black community in Alabama right now if people hadn't turned out to vote and we squeaked out a win over Roy Moore. You think Roy Moore would have gotten on the floor of the Senate and said Black Lives Matter? You think Tommy Tuberville's going to do that? Absolutely not. And so votes matter. Votes have consequences. So we got to get people engaged and registered. We got to get postcards and phone calls to people to start getting them enthused. We got to use social media out there to keep people engaged. You can call the headquarters and get yard signs and bumper stickers. We got them galore. Let's get the word out. And as we go forward past Labor Day, we're going to have better opportunities for organized get out the vote efforts. And so stay tuned. For those that are willing to help us, go on our website, dougjones.com. You can sign up to volunteer, and I promise you we'll be back in touch with you.
What is that phone number?
I don't have a phone number.
I just said we can call the headquarters.
Hell, it may be in my phone.
Website. He said website, man.
Well, hey, I thought I put you on the spot. You said we can call the headquarters.
Yeah.
Number.
All right. Now I know I got to prep a little bit better for these interviews sometime. I never had.
When I'm on the call.
I got memos after memos about prepping for these things, but not a one of them says, "Oh, and by the way, your campaign phone number is this."
Hey, leave it up to not necessarily political to ask the hard questions.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's right.
But ladies and gentlemen, to the young voters, to everybody that's voting out there in November, Senator Jones he's civil rights history. He's working with his current history, as we call it today. Even though we're present, Black Lives Matter, this movement that's going on now will be history. in a little while, but he's been a part of it. He's speaking on the floor for you. To the people who care nothing about Black Lives Matter, he's still fighting for you. He's writing bills, he's getting them passed. He's working for the people. I'm not trying to throw salt on anybody. I'm not trying to dog anybody out, but I'm just sorry. I don't think a football coach who I think was released with about $5 million in his pocket go against somebody who's trying to get $600 a week to survive, eat. I don't think we need somebody who is a rubber stamp for a president who cares nothing about the people that it appears to be. I tried to hold back, Senator. I'm sorry, but we
that's okay. You can let it rip as far as I'm concerned. Okay?
We got to quit putting people in that don't care for the people. Moscow Mitch is detrimental to America's history. He's doing everything. He's blocking so many bills. Look how many bills he stopped on the floor that could help the people. We're in a recession right now. We're almost close to a depression if we don't work out. We have to find people who are going to get in there and do something. We have a senator who's in Alabama, who's a Democrat, who's worked with a Republican senator. They work together. They're passing stuff to get through our, let's keep going forward. We can't go backwards anymore. America can't take another hit like we're doing right now. November 3rd is highly important. It's very important. Whether you mail in your ballot, absentee ballot, drive up on the curb, walk in, get out there and vote no matter what you do. Senator,
that was a TV commercial there, wasn't it, Lonnie?
I'm Doug Jones, and I approve this message.
Right.
I know, right?
Lonnie, you sound like a Baptist preacher.
Yeah.
I was about ready to lift the tithe and offering, Doc.
Yes, but Senator,
look, let me go say I've got another interview I got to do. Let me just say this as we wrap up, guys. Thank you all. Thanks for everybody watching it. But I do want to say this, and I want to reiterate. Regardless, it is so important to get out and vote. Alabama has one of the lower percentage turnouts of votes, and we got to get that up. If we get that up, we're going to do so much better as a state. We're going to do so much better as a country. We got to get that up. And you know what? We're making sacrifices right now because of this pandemic. We've had a healthcare crisis. We've got an economic crisis, and we got a crisis of inequality. And we're working these through together. I am absolutely convinced that we are going to come out of the back end of this pandemic stronger. We're going to come out better, and we're going to come out a more just society. Just remember the words of the late Robert F. Kennedy, one of my political heroes. Robert Kennedy said, "We all might wish at times that we lived in a more tranquil world, but we don't. But if our times are difficult and perplexing, so too are they challenging and filled with opportunities. Let's use this opportunity that we have in front of us now to come out better and stronger and more just. It is challenging, but it is filled with opportunities for the future, for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, and for generations to come." Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed being with you. It's great to see you.
thanks, Senator.
And before you leave, Senator, let me say this to you: the John Lewis tribute that you did, if nobody ever told you, I appreciate it. I just wanted you to know that, because you did not have to use your platform for that, but you showed yourself as a man of character, and me, just a man who respected and honored Mr. Lewis. I just wanted to tell you face to face, and I got a chance. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. That was from the heart. I can tell you.
We can tell it's very good seeing you.
Take care, buddy. Bye bye.
Okay.
All right.
James and Valton, 1 second. I was going to ask him for a soapbox, but he seemed like he did it. But I want to make sure the people see this one video, one commercial about Senator Jones on 1 second.
In a time when it seems like we're more divided than ever, Alabama and America took a chance on unity.
I can work with Senator Shelby and Republicans better than Roy Moore can work with anyone. I'm asking you for the chance to do just that.
The results? We made history together.
I have always believed that the people of Alabama had more in common than to divide us. We have shown, not just around the state of Alabama, but we have shown the country the way that we can be unified.
2.5 years ago, we took a chance on this man's promise to find common ground. And Senator Doug Jones kept his promise. Senator Doug Jones led 17 bipartisan bills, all signed into law, improving rural health, supporting farmers, aiding economic recovery and jobs, supporting our military, getting things done for us, with the stakes higher than they've ever been. We need more uniters, not dividers. Doug Jones, One Alabama.
We have shown the country the way that we can be unified.
All right, gentlemen. If you don't mind, before we go, would you all give us a quick wrap up, and a soapbox for the people?
Oh, my soapbox is easy. Saturday, August 22nd, be at Patton Park. We're going to ring bells in unity. It starts at 2 o'clock. It's the National Day of Freedom and Justice, and we are out there showing solidarity for the people that are behind the bars, or the people that are, and you're going to hear stories from a lot of families that are going through a lot of injustice, and we're there to show them that we are in solidarity with them, and we're going to continue to fight injustice. So that's my soapbox. August 22nd, y'all.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to just say, Donnie, you did an outstanding job getting Senator Jones on the line. And I think the next step is to get Senator Harris on the line, our next vice president. So let's work towards that and a venue. We'll talk offline about where I think we should probably do that. But whatever I can do to help facilitate, I'm there. And James, I'll be there August 22nd. If you need my voice, you know you can use it.
I can use it. Outstanding, brother.
All right, bro.
Ladies,
all right.
Across the board, not necessarily political, except for on Twitter, is that necessarily not necessarily political, will always be to engage the people, control the narrative, and empower the people. We go after these interviews for you to get information straight from the people, not hearsay. Senator Jones has done a lot. He's trying to do a lot, but it's Alabama. He has to work within that system. So right now, November the 3rd, we don't care about if a person is black or not. We don't, let's stop right now. If voting wasn't so important, why in the world are they trying to suppress it so hard? Right now, they're getting rid of the post office. I posted the other day, you can always get a job at the post office. They're trying to close the post office down now just to stop it. And you heard from the Senate, Donald Trump, President Trump, actually already applied to so he can mail his in. So
absolutely.
Is it not? Let's get away from the shenanigans, I guess you want to call it. November 3rd, whatever you do, please vote. If you know anybody need absentee ballots, help them out. I thank you, gentlemen, for this interview. I really enjoy when we talk to people like this because they have power. Senators are really, really powerful. Also, after they vote the new president in, please go out during midterms and vote for your senators.
Yeah.
Please remember that. We're going to be talking about that too. We need to get in there. We had, we didn't want to keep the senator too long, but well, I'm sure he'll come back later on once he's in and we can sit down and talk to him. But anything else, look out for us next Sunday. We'll be back across the board. Thursday, we have our Conversation is Art series where we're interviewing great musicians across the country. So we'll be back Thursday at 7 p.m. on Not Necessarily Political. Thank you all for joining us.
Whoa, don't forget August 25th, man. There's still some elections going on here locally that we need, in our smaller cities, your midfields and in different areas. You got some elections going on, man. So people need to get out and vote, man. Please get out and vote August the 25th, right?
In Jefferson County surrounding areas, you have Fairfield, Midfield. You have Gary Richardson over in Midfield. You have Robert Averhart over there in Fairfield. Just a few people, but you got them Centerpoint. Centerpoint is looking to have their first black mayor. Tarrant is looking.
Irondale has got to vote, right?
A lot of these places are trying to move up. I'm not just a black, select the first black person, but these people actually have been working in the systems for a long time. But November the 3rd, Please, please, please find the time, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Please get out there and take time out to vote. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, Hoover and Homewood. That's right, Hoover and Homewood. Helena, you're right. God dog it. Let me hold on one second.